Okay, back at it. I kind of thought about this when I made the video the other day about Mike Repole's post about responding to the X account UFL fans, and he was kind of answering some of their questions about the schedule, the roster, all that kind of stuff. And there was one thing I really didn't tackle that now that I kind of thought about it, I wanted to take a little more time to kind of think about it. It was really about the rules part. So let me read the part that he asked about it. He was like, And one last thing, I am working with the UFL Rules Committee. I would like to know from our fans, what would be your average ideal score for a high quality, energetic, exciting football game? So what's your ideal final game score?" And this kind of brought up the idea of what could the UFL do to be more exciting, get more points on the board? Because I think most fans probably want more offense versus more defense. So we live in a day and age where it's all about scoring more points, getting more offense involved and have a high scoring, exciting game. I think that's always been kind of a big thing with football, especially in today's age, where it's more about passing the football versus running the football. So I kind of thought about like what rules should the UFL change? What should they keep? Is there anything they really need to change? I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I really thought a lot about it, and I can't really pinpoint anything that I would change about the league. Like, the rules, I think, are really good where it needs to be. Are they perfect? Maybe not, but I don't know what rules people I would want to change because I see a lot of people going in the comments talking about I think the most common thing I saw was the extra point. I think there's a lot of people that don't like the 1, 2, 3 point extra point, and being blunt, that's probably mostly legacy USFL people. And most people know, like, even though I covered both leagues, I am a little more biased when it comes to the XFL. I'm not going to lie about it. I just, there's a different relationship there with the XFL versus the USFL. So I always liked the 1, 2, 3 point extra point. I understand, the one side of people saying that it takes the kickers out of the game more and it kind of makes them, less important. But at the same time, you're trying to make the game more exciting. You're trying to change it up. Like I love the 1, 2, or 3 point extra point. Maybe if anything, I would get rid of the 1 point and just make it 2 points or 3 points. Like I would just do it that way and just eliminate 1 point altogether. But that might be nitpicky. I don't actually care if they change it or not because I love that play no matter what. I know some people talked about, changing some of the punting rules. Um, I think it's okay the way it is. I again, like I guess with Mike Repole's question, he's asking like, what's an ideal score and what can we do to get to that point? Which most people reply would probably be, well, we want more points. We want the games should be in my perfect world, the final score should be team scoring between 20 to 30 points, maybe even more, 20 to 40 points. If we want to do in that range, you want at least 20 points by each team in a game because it means they're scoring a lot of points. Now, if you're going to have a game where somebody's less than 20 points, you ideally want it to be like 20 to 17, 20 to 14, or 17-14, like something close. We want these games to be competitive because the most important part of this league is about parity and making sure everyone is, equally talented enough that they can, there's no huge difference between like the top teams versus the low teams. And that's been kind of a problem with spring football since 2020 is there has been a big difference between like the best teams in the league versus the worst teams in the league. Like the parity is so important, especially late in the season, because when you get later in the season, that's less sports competition that you have to go after if you're the UFL. So you need more eyes on your league. And no one's going to care if they're watching a week 10 game, which is the most important weekend of the year, and all the playoffs have been set. And pretty much every year it's been like that in spring football, where the final week of the season has really never made a huge difference. There might have been some things where it's okay, one team's playing for home field advantage, but then you run into the stadium issues, and it's like, well, who cares at that point? Who cares who wins the conference? And it's going to be more important this year than ever because we don't have conferences anymore. So it's all about clinching playoff spots. And from the past experience, it's always been that, we're the playoffs have already been set, so it doesn't really matter. So it is it goes back to the point of, what can you change that can make the game more exciting? I can't think of anything, honestly. Like I don't know what else I would change. I would maybe tinker a little bit, with the content of the football league. I did this in my video the other day where I talked about they're having, the continental shift rule in the fourth quarter where they're kind of moving everything to like CFL rules and they're doing like a 20-second play clock. That I would be interested in testing out and seeing, if we want more scoring, if we want the game to be more exciting, like, could we do a shorter play clock? Could we force teams to do more no huddle? How would that look? Would that work? Would that not work? I'm not 100% if it would work, but I'd still be fascinated to see if we'd be able to pull something off with it and be able to generate more points. I'm, I'm from the generation that loves offense, so I would love to see more points. So any way we could do that is great. I feel like the best way to do that is to maybe shorten the play clock, which the league has, tinkered with in the past and they've done a good job with because it is shorter than what the NFL is doing with their 40-second play clock. So I would like a shorter play clock just to force teams to maybe not do as much huddling if you want to go back to, doing the wristband or doing whatever and don't get into the huddle. I think that would be cool. Because I do feel like that would kind of change things a bit and make the scoring a little bit more. You could copy the CFL and do three downs. CFL seems to do pretty well with points. I see most of their games hitting 20, 30 points. So for each team. So I think that would be something to look into, could three downs actually work? That might piss off the Canadians, but that watch the CFL, but we want to be experimental with it. That's one way to go about it. So, at the end of the day, like to me, I have no complaints about the rules, but I know there's a lot of people that complain about the kickoff and the extra points and all that. Like to me, like I love the kickoff because I do believe it's safer and we're getting more returns out of it. I think the NFL seems to be doing a lot better with the new kickoff rule this year. It seems to be they're getting into a rhythm now where they're able to create more returns. So I think the UFL should kind of, the UFL started it. I think they should continue to try to tinker with it a little bit, and the NFL's kind of tinkered with it. And I think they're starting to find a common balance between the kickoff. So kudos to them on it. But, maybe the UFL should challenge the play clock a little bit more. Maybe they should make it that you don't huddle. Like there's other aspects to kind of play around with it, but there is a certain point where you're going to have the traditional football fan that's like, well, I don't want you messing with my rules. I like my football how it is. And I think that's fair. But at the same time, you do the UFL's purpose is being innovative, right? Like you want to be able to change the rules. You want to be able to do different things and experiment so that maybe it is something the NFL can copy off of and do better. We've seen him multiple times, talk about the Sky Camp with the XFL. The NFL was able to copy off of it. The kickoff that the XFL created, that was something the NFL copied off as well. So there's certain it's okay to be innovative and be a little bit different. I think the traditional football fan needs to be, if you're going to watch UFL, you need to be okay with innovation and doing different things. You may not like it, and we can complain about it, and I think that's a great conversation to have. But at the same time, look what it's doing for the NFL. Look what it's doing for football. It does make it different. It does make it more exciting. So I would maybe tinker around with a little bit with it. The rules rule, I've always been kind of like up and down about because, I don't like the rules rule when it comes down to applying to on field goals, but I do like the rules rule when it comes down to applying on punters that if they're able to kick it out of the end zone, they get a point. Like I've always kind of liked that because you're adding more emphasis and more importance on punting. And I think that could maybe add, even if it's just a couple of points a game, it still adds points and it still adds some interest. Maybe you can make it 2 points. Like maybe you can make punting more important than ever, that you can make it a 2-3 point Rouge rule. Like they could play around with that a little bit. I would hope that they would consider that. I just don't want them to apply to field goals because my stance, guys. I don't think kickers should be rewarded for not doing their jobs, but I do think it does make an interesting aspect that they could consider. So at the end of the day, like, I understand what Rapoli's trying to do when he's trying to meet, he's meeting with the rules committee and trying to figure out, hey, how can we make, more points be on the board? How can we make this more exciting for fans so that they'll keep coming back to the games each week? For me, I kind of like where everything is right now. You can maybe plug in a few things, but ideally the score, I mean, each team should score 20 to 40 points. I think that will make it more exciting. And then I think the rules are good the way it is. You just need to keep building the rosters. You need to keep building the talent that's within the UFL because better talent you have, the better performances you're going to put on the field. If you don't get the best talent and limit yourself, then I think you're going to run into problems where you're going to have a bunch of games where it's like 13-9 or like 12-8 and just these weird low scoring games that no one's going to be interested with. Like you got to be able to get the best talent in the league to get that score higher. So maybe focus a little less on the rules and focus a little more on bringing in good talent. That would be my advice to Repole when he's having these conversations with the rules committee. So that's it for the video. Like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you guys think. What rules should the UFL change? Should they add anything? Should they subtract anything? Or is the league just good where it is? Let me know what you guys think. I appreciate you watching, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.